On your Thursday episode of Locked On Raptors, the announcement that the WNBA is coming to Toronto comes at the end of a lot of different dominoes falling. We get into how we got to this point. We talk about what to look forward to in the 2026 WNBA draft, where Toronto will be picking. And of course, it's name theory, all with the foremost voice on the WNBA in Toronto. It's Chelsea Leite coming up. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Thursday, May the what day? The 16th? Yeah, May the 16th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley, and I should stop pre-recording episodes because keeping track of time is a hard thing for me on a good day. Either way, I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 10 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on the Hell website at Woodley Sean. You can find the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors, and you can join us over on the Locked On Raptors Discord server. The link is in the description of the podcast. Come hang out. A great place to come and talk among friends, talk among sickos who love the podcast, who can't stop talking about the Toronto Raptors, even in the middle of May. Want to talk about the draft? We got that there for you in the Discord as well. Come hang out. It's free to join, a great little listener community we got building around the show. We'd love to see you there. Of course, you can find the show for free on your favorite audio podcast apps. Follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. Always appreciated when you support the show on the audio side of things, however you choose to do so. You can also go to YouTube and subscribe to the Locked On Raptors video version of the show every day. It's a great thing. It's free to subscribe. You get to push the notification bell, and you get a heads up via push notification that the show is going live or premiering every single day. So go do that, and I would appreciate that very, very much. I'd be forever indebted to you if you would go and support the YouTube channel, among the other places you can go and support the show. All right, on today's show, last week we all got very, very excited about the announcement that the WNBA is coming to Toronto via an expansion franchise for the 2026 season, which, you look around at 2026, that's so far away. No, it's 2 years away. The 2024 season starts this week. It's crazy. And so it's not a lot of time. We're going to get into sort of already looking ahead to the 2026 WNBA draft and what types of players might be available for the Toronto franchise in that expansion draft and all of that. We're going to get into, of course, the team name, the only thing anyone can think about right now. And we are, of course, going to just kind of get into the play-by-play of how we got to this point with someone who I'm just like so thrilled is here and so thrilled for, because she does a lot of great work covering the W and is now going to get to do it covering a Toronto franchise. It is Chelsea Leite from Raptors HQ. Chelsea, how the hell are you?
Hi, I'm fantastic.
That's as you should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very happy to have you on the show to talk WNBA to Toronto. We have talked about this at various times, highs and lows of the process of getting here. I think it was like 8 months ago we did an episode where it seemed like the dream was dead. Ed Rogers everywhere, and it felt like it was just not going to happen. But Larry Tannenbaum, the Kilmer Group, Teresa Resch, the sort of moving and shaking that's gone down over the last couple of months, it seemed like it was heading towards this point. And the WNBA is coming to Toronto. Of course, Chelsea, like a lot of stuff had to happen to make this a reality. You have been following this extremely closely all along. I'm just, sort of, it's not just, hey, we wanted a franchise. Give us a franchise. There's a lot of stuff that had to go into this from the WNBA side of things, like their context of wanting to sort of pursue expansion, travel concerns, et cetera, et cetera. I wonder if you can kind of give a bit of a play-by-play of the dominoes that had to fall to get to this point where now WNBA basketball is coming to Toronto, in fact.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's been like a very long journey. I think people have been kind of yelling about WNBA expansion for a few years, but I think it was only in like 2022 really that became more of a reality and that the league started taking it more seriously. I think 2022 was one of the first big growth years that the league saw in quite a while, and that came with everything with like social media presence and TV ratings and social media and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that was kind of the first step, was the growth that the league started to experience a couple of years ago, and the league itself wanting to start expanding. They talked about it vaguely for quite a while, that teams were interested, that this and that was going to happen. And since those beginning talks, it's been Toronto that has been on top of mind for people. And I mean, it came at a good time, you know, post 2019 Raptors run, that
Sure.
basketball was, you know, highly talked about in the city, and that, you know, we proved that there's such a strong appetite and culture for basketball here through that whole Raptors, you know, the whole We the North era, so to speak. But I think it was around 2022, 2023 where they started being serious. They started going on visits. And I think one of the first things that proved that Canada was top of mind for those talks was the first game we had here back in May of last year. Literally, I think it was like today, a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
literally, well, that the day we're recording. The day we're
Yes.
recording on Monday, literally a year ago to this day, that the first exhibition game happened, which is nuts. And that was kind of the first time I think people on the WNBA side of things started to see, oh, okay, like Toronto is an actual place where this could thrive. Because honestly, like, and I only realized this when I started working with more Americans, but like, they don't know what's happening up here. They don't know anything about Canada, culture, what's happening in Toronto. There was a couple of us that were like yelling about wanting a WNBA team, and they're like, yeah, like Canada, sure. But like,
Yeah.
then this game happened, and it was like, okay, oh, this is serious. And I think through that and seeing all of that excitement, then more brands started getting involved. The WNBA started doing more programming up here. They did a huge initiative with local entrepreneurs to do like merch that was only for Canadians to buy, with local companies and like women entrepreneurs and stuff, which was really good. They did, you know, partnerships with NBA Canada, with Canada Basketball, with all of these things. And then again, like last year, the TV viewing numbers, especially for Canada, like skyrocketed. I think it was between 2022 and 2023, there was like a 230 something % increase in Canadian TV viewing for the WNBA. And so all of those numbers combined with like Toronto as a market, with the infrastructure we have here, for basketball teams in general, for sports teams in general, the fact that you didn't have to build a new arena, the fact that they already have this like dedication to sports teams here, all helped. And then obviously the MLSE news last fall was kind of a setback, but Larry Tannenbaum going off on his own with someone like Teresa, who has like relevant experience, and all of those other factors. I mean, the Edmonton game this year was just kind of like a sealed thing, being like, oh, okay, I had a lot of American friends who saw the Edmonton game and were like, oh, okay, like it's a lock now. Like, they're just going to announce the team at some point. So all of those things, all of the steps that had to happen. And the final one was just Larry Tannenbaum being interested in getting Teresa and building a formidable bid that the WNBA would accept, because they're quite strict about who is going to build these teams, because they want, you know, the owners to be invested. They want the facilities to be top notch. They want the teams to grow, as opposed to just like putting a team just to put a team. So
Sure.
that's kind of a long-winded explanation, but
No, I asked for one.
yeah,
Thank you.
so that was the I think that's like the short way of explaining the process without having to get too much into like business and money and all of that stuff.
Sure.
But yeah,
Yeah,
so
business, money, blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. And now
I guess,
yeah.
sorry. I guess sort of like the next or the last sort of thing I think that's happened in the last couple of weeks as well, that I think sort of signaled, oh, okay, maybe something's happening here, is the charter flight thing.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, the WNBA up until this season flies commercial, and I think that was always sort of a big hindrance, considering, you know, cross-border travel is already a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And then adding it being commercial and not charter was going to be just sort of this added layer of difficulty. That seems to have almost come together in the last couple of weeks. Some hiccups with the New York Liberty. We'll see Kathy Engelbert, you know, doing the thing of, hey, we're doing this thing, but maybe not doing it the best.
Well,
but yeah, like what's the
yeah.
sort of charter flight situation and how that kind of plays into all this as well, if at all?
Yeah, of course. So so the commercial flights thing has been a topic in the W for a while,
Yeah.
and it's so obviously if you're a big basketball fan, you know what a chartered bargaining agreement is. You know a CBA. The player, if you don't know, it's the agreement between the players' union and the league. So it's like the
Hmm.
contract that you have to, and you know the NBA has one, the WNBA has one, and so they negotiated every couple of years, and the last time that they negotiated it, the league was not at the platform it is now. It's not was not at
Hmm.
the popularity it is now, and so chartered flights were not included in that deal. And so the league has kind of been saying, well, we don't have the money, we don't have the infrastructure to develop this program. There's been back and forths over the past couple of years where like certain owners, because there's a huge disparity in the ownership of the WNBA. Some owners are investing a ton, some owners aren't.
Sure.
It's a whole thing. But some of the owners a couple of years ago were like, we have the money and the like planes ready if the WNBA wants to let us do this. And they were kind
Hmm.
of like, no, like we don't want to. So then
Yeah.
last year, what they did was start implementing chartered flights for certain games. So if you had a back to back in two different cities for the playoffs, all of the playoffs, and for the Commissioner's Cup, which is the WNBA's in season tournament, that
Hmm.
was all chartered flights. And so that was like the beginning of the program. But the same thing happened last year as this year, where the wording around it was a little interesting. So they were kind of like, yeah, we're bringing chartered flights to the W. And everybody was like, yay. And then they were like, but only for these times. It was like the little like fine print after the initial announcement. So like when it came about this year again, I was like, oh, okay, it's going to be another one of those where it's like fine print moment. But I mean, now they're starting. You know, where the news coming out today on Monday is that some teams are starting the league with chartered flights and some aren't. While they like
Hmm.
figure it out, which like in my
Build the
opinion,
planes or
yeah, is like a little unfair. And I get like player safety. I get, you know, how a player like Caitlin Clark needs maybe a little bit more security, but also you had a situation last year where Brittany Griner definitely needed a bit more security
sure.
and the treatment wasn't the same. So, I mean, this it has nothing to do with Caitlin herself. It's just kind of the way that the league kind of does things. And I know like
Hmm.
it's been a very fast thing happening. I don't think they were intending to do the chartered flights this year. I think it was honestly going to be a huge negotiating point in the CBA, which is going to be negotiated before the 2025 season in a year.
Right.
But I think like they saw all of this stuff happening with Clark at the airport and like people being weird to all these NBA or WNBA players, and we're kind of like, we should probably do this now, like for player safety. So I'm glad
Sure.
that they are doing it. The rollout is a little sus, to say the least, but as long as they get it going soon and like there isn't a huge length of time where we're having this like because the biggest explanation for the past couple of years of why some teams weren't allowed to do it and if owners had the money and whatever was that it was unfair, and it is
Hmm.
unfair. But
Sure.
like now they're doing it in a way that like some teams get to fly charter to start the season and some teams don't, and it's like, okay, but that's unfair.
Yeah.
Like so hopefully we'll see over the next couple weeks how the program goes, but that was the huge thing with Toronto because obviously you weren't going to make these people go through customs,
Hmm.
especially the Toronto team having to go back and forth.
Yeah.
So that was a huge thing. And so that once that came about last week, I was like, oh, okay, we're going to hear about this
It's
quite soon.
happening. It's going
Yeah.
down. Let's
Yeah.
go.
People
Get
are
the
like,
fire alarm ready.
literally, people were like, did you have any like inside knowledge that was going to happen? And I was like, no. But once the flights thing happened, I was like, ooh, soon,
Yeah.
soon time.
Let's go. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, big, and you would hope that, knock on wood, 2026, the sort of weird rollout will not be an issue, and they'll
No.
just be flying charter and being cozy on their charter jets, and everything's lovely.
Hopefully
and good.
next
And so,
month the chartered thing
yeah,
isn't
that would be
an
great
issue.
too.
Yeah.
Speaking of a couple years down the road, we are going to come back on the other side and get into the idea of launching an expansion franchise. Expansion franchises need basketball players. We will get into the process. There's no news yet on how the expansion draft or anything will work, but the league is in a spot now where there's a whole lot of talent and some very interesting talent coming through college as well. We'll get into the concept of building a team from scratch with Chelsea coming up here in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With an eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is gonna fit the first time, every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Back at it here with Chelsea Leite from Raptors HQ, talking WNBA. Just a reminder, Locked On Sports Today 24/7 is your all-day streaming channel on YouTube where Locked On shows run all the live long day. You don't even have to pick the shows. We just pick them for you and you watch them. Locked On Women's Basketball will be on there a bunch this week with the WNBA season starting, for example, and all the other shows from the local angles covering the biggest stories, national shows as well. A great way to procrastinate working and just have something on all day, so you don't actually have to pay attention and do work. Do it. All right, Chelsea, let's talk about assembling the team. I think there's probably a skeptic or two out there in Toronto basketball circles who's like, all right, an expansion team in Toronto. Well, I remember the last time that happened where the league had this weird rule where the Raptors couldn't pick first overall for X number of years. They had to pick, I think, fourth or fifth. They got Damon Stoudemire. That worked out well. It didn't work out so well for the Grizzlies. Sorry, Bryant Reeves catching strays here. And of course, there was an expansion draft, but like the early or the mid-90s Raptors and Grizzlies were not set up to succeed right out of the gate with the way the NBA was set up. And I think at that time, probably like with the expansion in the mid-90s, you're looking at maybe the most diluted talent pool in the history of the NBA right around that time. And so that played into this as well. Just numbers. There weren't that many good basketball players, and there were now, 30 teams to deal with. The WNBA is in a different spot, Chelsea. It is loaded with talent to the point that first-round picks often get cut from their basketball teams. There is like a ton of talent around the league, only a finite number of roster spots, and expansion. A big reason for the need for expansion is, holy crap, there's just so many good women's basketball players right now who belong in the WNBA. We got to create more roster spots for them. When you couple that with the insane amount of talent coming through college, it feels like, Chelsea, there's a pretty good shot here for the Toronto team to build a legitimately competitive team, hopefully pretty quickly. Maybe not right out of the gate, but what are your thoughts before we get into some specific names to keep an eye on in college ball for the next couple of years, which you wrote about today over at Give Me Sport? What's your sort of impression of how quickly they'll be able to build a team and kind of avoid the typical expansion team thing where it's many, many years in the wilderness before real competitiveness?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get a good tester on how things are going to go because the WNBA has an expansion team coming before the Toronto team. They have the Golden State yet to be named team coming literally in 2025. So this offseason, we're going to see how the WNBA plans to make the rules for expansion teams, how they do the draft, all that kind of stuff. But you said it, with the reality is there's so much talent that gets cut from the WNBA every day that every team that you expand with is still going to be an incredibly good roster because of the fact that you are pulling from all of this good talent. So very curious to see how they do it, how many reserved spots each team gets for the expansion, if they do any similar rules to whether or not teams can have the number one pick or trade for the number one pick or anything like that. It's very different. In the WNBA draft is very different from the NBA draft. Nobody has a guaranteed deal. There's no rules technically on who you have to keep or all of that stuff. And there's times where say the number 8 pick will get waived, but the number 17 pick makes it on the team and ends up having a very sustainable, consistent career. So it's very interesting to see how it shakes out every year, and it's more about fit than it is order of the draft and how high you go. So with expansion, it's just going to make that a little bit more interesting because teams are going to have more wiggle room to be able to go deeper into the draft. They're also going to have more of a free agency pool to think about because you have so many, unrestricted agent free players who would love to be playing in the WNBA, but there's no space for them.
Sure.
And then you have all of these people coming from college who are just like the next wave of superstars, and they're going to have more opportunities to shine from early on. So it's just like a very different landscape than NBA expansion, and just like exciting to see how they do it. And yeah, Toronto's going to have a good chance because there's like a unrelenting depth of talent in this league and in women's basketball that it's hard not to immediately be good with these players.
I love that. Unrelenting depth of talent. That is an excellent set of words put in sequence. So on that note, college ball, obviously we saw this past year, completely blew up on the women's side. Easily the better of the two tournaments that were going down because the star power is off the freaking charts. Yeah. And so, obviously eligibility rules work a little bit differently in the WNBA. There's no one and dones. You can kind of predict a little bit further out, like when certain players are going to hit the draft and all of that. With that in mind, 2026, not that far away. There are going to be some legitimate potential stars available near the top of the draft. And even if like Toronto doesn't pick at the top spot in their first season in the league, you would guess they'll probably pick somewhere in the top 4 or 5. Hopefully, it would be weird to have an expansion team be like, you pick last, deal with it, losers. Thanks for your expansion fee. But yeah, let's just kind of run through some of the names here. There's a lot of them, names that people will already be familiar with, maybe names that are going to become more familiar over the next couple of years, but just maybe give the uninitiated an idea of some of the names to kind of keep an eye on here over the next couple of years who could very much be there for the Raptors. It's not the Raptors. Good God. We'll get into team names. Sorry. I've talked about the Raptors literally all day long. It's on my brain.
Who is the
Toronto
guy who
WNBA team?
Yeah. Who's the guy who thinks they should be called the W Raptors?
Oh, yeah. That's right. We don't need to name him because he's a loser.
He's a loser.
The W Raptors.
The W Raptors.
Who are some future potential W Raptors, Chelsea, is what I'm asking.
The draft works again very differently from the NBA. The rules are for the WNBA right now. They could change in the future, but right now it's you have to finish your degree. You have to graduate with a degree, whether that's a 3-year degree or a 4-year degree. It doesn't matter. You just have to graduate with a degree. And then you also have to be turning 22 years old in the year that you get drafted, the calendar year, not the school year. And so because of that, some players are allowed to declare after their 3rd year. Some players are allowed to declare after their 4th year. Right now, we're in a weird wave of COVID extra year of eligibility. Right. So some players have been playing 5 years. I believe that ends next year is the last year. So by the time Toronto is picking in the draft, it's going to be all these like 3 and 4 year players. But a very easy way to figure out when a person is eligible is just to go search their birthday and figure out when they turn 22. And so in 2026 and 2027, there's a lot of talent coming out because that's all the people who were like freshmen and sophomores this past year and just absolutely tore it up. So yeah, like I think the first one that comes to mind is JuJu Watkins coming out in 2027, currently plays for USC and is like, right now, looks like she could play in the WNBA at like 18. Like, average like 27.1 points per game for USC this year. They got to the Elite Eight. They won the very last Pac-12 championship that will ever be. Rest in peace to the Pac-12. And it's just like, if you know anything about, it's like impossible not to cheer for this kid. Like, she is so charismatic, so good at basketball. Like, the story is just amazing. She's LA born and raised, and the coach of USC just kind of was like, hey, like, let's build your hometown team back into the ranks. Because USC won back-to-back championships, national championships, in 1983 and 1984. We're like one of the biggest schools churning out WNBA / women's basketball talent in the 80s and 90s. And kind of then fell off after that. And so now they're kind of like, okay, we have the best player coming in the next couple of years. Let's rebuild this dynasty. And so that's what they've done. And she's just so good and so cheerable and so cool. This makes me sound old, but she's just you're like, she's so cool. So just again, like 27.1 points per game in her freshman season, brought her team to the Elite Eight. Completely like comes to the moment every time, despite being 18 years old. Is only going to get better and going to like continue to get accolades as she goes along in her college career. Has 3 more years of college to develop. And then if Toronto can get her, it'll be in their second year.
Right.
I mean, if they're allowed to, I'm like, if you're allowed to trade trade everyone, like get JuJu Watkins. JuJu Watkins, like in 4 years, I think we'll be getting the Caitlin Clark hype that is that is happening right now. Like that's how good she is. So she's like the biggest name that comes to mind. And then there's also, I mean, 2026, you have Flau'jae Johnson, who is just like, again, the coolest. Like I look at all these kids and I'm like, I could never be that cool. She's one that actually is a little bit more attainable because right now is kind of like in the like 5 or 6 range for top round picks. And if Toronto picks a little later and they say, you know, you can't have maybe a top pick, Flau'jae is one that you could get because she's kind of in that range. I mean, she has 2 more years she could raise in the draft.
Rise up,
yeah, which is completely plausible because she's very good. But as it stands right now, she's also a rapper, which is so cool and so fun. And like, it's just like really cool. And I'm like, she would come to Toronto and people would love her. Like so charismatic, so personable, is so good at like being in the spotlight, as most of these young women's players are because they're getting so much more spotlight and like NIL deals now. But she's another one. She's just like, she's a tall guard. She's great at defense. It has a very like, do you know when you watch players? It's like how I describe Siakam. It's just like there's pretty basketball. Like they're just like cool to watch, and you're just like, how does their body move like that? So she's another one like that. Has like a very cool like one-legged mid-range jumper that she like pulls out. Very quick. Again, like should have been guarding Caitlin Clark. I don't know why Haley Van Lith was on that during that game. I will go back to that. But anyway, that'll be something I'll be thinking about for a while. But she's like a pretty attainable one. So she's like 2026 first year. You also have Milaysia Fulwiley, who plays for Dawn Staley right now, already a national champion, despite, you know, just being a first year. They had that undefeated season. And then you have the benefit of being coached by Dawn Staley, which automatically just puts you in a good position.
Seems valuable. Seems helpful. Yeah.
It's a little helpful. It's, you know, not like she coached Asia Wilson or anything, but, or the Olympic USA basketball team. It's fine. But, yeah, just like Milaysia Fulwiley's first college basketball game was in Paris, France, which is cool. And she just like, it was her first game. She's from South Carolina, like hometown kid coming into her college again. That's another similar story. And just like showed up in France and was like, yeah, I'm going to like absolutely beat Notre Dame in my first game and score a bunch of points and do a bunch of highlight stuff that has people in America just like losing their minds on Twitter. And then just like continue to be consistent. And I mean, she was a bench player for South Carolina, which like just shows their depth and how good that team is and will be next year as well. But just like incredibly has like such a lot of confidence. I think the big thing with a lot of these young players is like so much confidence for being so young, and just like does cool stuff because she's like, I might as well. Right. So that's like another thing is like, I feel like Toronto basketball fans, because we're kind of in this like weird bubble of like people always maybe underestimate us or underestimate the franchises, the Raptors anyway. And like, you know, we've had these weird up and down eras of like, sometimes you just got to like find the silver linings in the basketball you're watching, is like, can really appreciate like a good, like highlight really enjoyable player to watch. So she's another one that's like just so great. I mean, you have Kiki Rice, who plays at UCLA right now. You have
I don't want you to spoil your entire piece.
No. There's just
everyone
like so many
read
names.
The whole darn thing.
Oh man, there's so many of them.
That is the beautiful thing about women's ball right now. It's so, as you said, unrelenting stream of talent, or whatever the exact verbiage you used.
Yeah.
I don't want you to spoil the entire piece you wrote for Give Me Sport today, because everyone should go check it out and read for themselves about JuJu Watkins and Flau'jae Johnson and Milaysia Fulwiley and the rest of the potential prospects there.
Yeah.
So we'll leave that there for now. But yes.
The other thing I didn't get to mention in that article because I didn't have the space was like how many Canadians are going to be coming out at that time.
Oh yeah.
Like Silas Swords and Toby Fournier, like they're going to be coming out at like 2028, I think. Or is their year? And like Toronto could very likely get them. And so like that's 100%. A whole other conversation of like how many Canadians are going to be on this team. It's like the Raptors are going through right now, just like trying to build Canada basketball on the Toronto Raptors is what this team should do. I'm very into that.
Yeah, it's all extremely exciting, and yeah, like you said, I think you're not gonna have to worry about the mid '90s Raptors expansion team syndrome of Oliver Miller's our best player. No, there will be no Oliver Miller stand-in replacements or anything like that on this team. It's very exciting. We will come back on the other side here, Chelsea, and we will get into team name theory. Everyone has their opinions. Some of them are bad, like Huskies. Other ones are good. We will get into all that coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by BetterHelp. And look, sometimes it's nice to have someone to talk to. It can always be a difficult time of year. Maybe you're dealing with, a life decision. You're dealing with relationships that need some more TLC, whatever it might be. Having a therapist you can talk to kind of sort through your feelings and sort through your decisions and making decisions that align with your values and all of that is a very valuable thing. If you keep stuff bottled up, you don't talk about it, you can't really start to deal with it. It's going to affect you negatively in some way. Therapy is a safe space to get things off your chest and figure out how to work through whatever's weighing you down, whether you've been through major trauma or it's just the daily stuff that life throws at you. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Back at it here, closing out the show with Chelsea Leite from Raptors HQ. And I teased before the break talking about team names. And when I said Huskies was bad, Chelsea seemed offended. And so we'll start there. I made my feelings on this note on Friday's show. I think Huskies feels recycled. I think Huskies feels it's a man's basketball team, first of all. We don't need to take what a man's team did and apply it to the women's team coming in, give them a new, fresh identity. I think that's the ideal thing for me here. Also, you're never going to be the best Huskies in women's basketball because UConn is the best Huskies in women's basketball. Yeah. I get all of the history stuff, but give me something new and fresh. Chelsea, tell me why I'm wrong if, in fact, you think I'm wrong.
I mean, I have very particular feelings on team names. And again, I'm like...
People who listen to this podcast know that's never a thing I've had strong opinions on ever once in my entire life.
Yeah. I just think, and I think this is more of an issue for me personally in women's sports, because I also think there's additional connotations when you're naming a women's sports team. Sure. And my biggest thing is I don't want them to be named stuff that's inherently girly. To try and make it more ladylike. That's my biggest thing with naming women's sports teams, because often I feel these franchises go for weak names so that they don't look aggressive and can be more marketable to the people they need to be ladylike. Hate that. So that's my biggest thing with some of these names that are coming up. I'm let's not lean into the gender aspect of it.
Sure.
With Huskies, I just I like a team name. Here are all of my criteria for a team name. A sports team name. A sports team name, in my opinion, needs to be something intimidating. It needs to be something that's kind of showing dominance over your opponents. It needs to be something that's not weak. It needs to be something that, and I have this weird thing where I don't like names that are just entities. I get that. Miami Heat? What? Why?
Yeah, I don't pluralize names most of the time. Yes, I've suggested Toronto Smoke, but that is, you can't pluralize smoke. It's just a thing. Which I guess is kind of,
Sometimes it works.
My point. Yeah.
Seattle
Very
Storm
rare
works.
Occasions. Yeah,
Seattle Storm really works, but and I'm sorry to people who are fans of the Sky, love the team, love the jerseys, the colorway, but the Chicago Sky to me, I'm really?
Miserable, yeah.
Really?
Just the whole thing. That's us. It's the whole thing up there.
So there's some of these names in the W where I'm Really? And I just want to make sure that the Toronto team, to me, Huskies, not only does it have a good, and I also, my third criteria is when it has like a good connection to the city. Like, I like when it has like a historical connection or like a cultural connection to the place where you're playing. So, like, for me, like, Storm is a good name because, like, it connects to the location because it's in Seattle. It's like intimidating because storms are scary. And like the way that they've branded, it just like it works. And it's not like a weak girly name.
Sure.
You know?
Also,
it's like
shout out Doppler, really good mascot.
Yeah.
But that's just besides the point.
Yeah, exactly.
About mascots.
So like a few of those things, like that makes it work. Whereas like other ones, I'm like, what are we doing here? And so for me, Huskies is just kind of like it relates back to the city's basketball history. There's a huge like culture of like the name Huskies in women's basketball because you have the Yukon Huskies. It's like a good fierce animal name. I feel like animal names work for teams because then you get like
fierce. They're like the most pleasant dogs in the world.
But they're like scary dogs. They're like wild dogs.
Yeah, they're domesticated little babies. I love this. Huskies are like my favorite dogs. They're little sweethearts. But,
yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like I'm definitely open to more. Like I'm not completely sold on the name. Like if it's not Huskies, I'm not going to be happy or anything. But then people are suggesting some of these names, and I'm like, like it's just not hitting.
Let me see if I can find a blog post of suggested names for the.
It's like
bear everything on the fly while I Google here.
One of so my supervisor at Raptors HQ, his name's Harrison, big Lakers guy, great guy.
Yeah.
But he his suggestion is that they name it after another big movie franchise that is going to be big during the next 2 years. So he keeps calling them the Toronto Dune 2s.
Toronto Sandworms, I'm all in. I'm all in.
Not the
Toronto Lisan Al Gaibs, I'm all in. Let's go. The Toronto Muad'Dibs, let's go.
So that's his suggestion, which I find hilarious because obviously we know that's what happened with our other Toronto basketball team. So, and then a lot of people are like, let's make it another dinosaur name. I'm like, no, like the teams aren't connected. They're not sister brother. It's two different ownership groups. We're not doing that. I mean, it is Larry. My guy Larry is connected to both, but you know.
There are some bad ones that have been suggested. Sportsnet has a piece with some names that have like quote unquote emerged as potential options. I think it's just like people did posts about them on Twitter, and so that they're now have emerged. Toronto Towers. I don't dislike it. I think it was one of the original names for the Raptors. It's not that good. It's fine.
It's not intimidating. What about a tower?
Basketball intonations. Like if you have like two enormous rim protecting bigs, like okay, then you're the Toronto Towers. But you might not always have that. Maybe you're a team that likes to play small. Who knows? The Toronto Loons. I don't know.
No
Loons. I know they make cool sounds, but come on.
It's to try to give like a money thing, like a loony thing.
Oh God, even worse.
Terrible.
Capitalist undertones, not for me, not in my professional sports. Yeah. Toronto Pterodactyls, miserable, awful, terrible.
Awful.
Pterodactyls, cool. 4-syllable team names, awful. T-Rex, no thanks.
Nope.
Terrible. Yeah, not it. The Tigers?
No.
Tigers, yeah.
It doesn't fit.
The Stars, all totally.
There was already a Stars WNBA franchise, so you can't do that.
That's exactly true. And there's also like the Dallas Stars. There's other. I also don't like replicating other pro sports teams.
Yeah,
another thing I like some originality.
Yeah.
Tigers is done by like all of the teams. It's like Huskies. It's the name of half of the schools I played grade 8 basketball against.
Yep. Yeah.
There's the Six, basketball. Which this needs to stop.
Yeah, that one is like. Again, it's recycling, like another women's sports team. And I feel like another big thing that is going to like lend to this is what the PWHL team ends up being called.
Yep, for sure.
Because then you need to pick something that is completely different from the PWHL team, but also like not goes with it, but like, you know, that's going to be a huge thing that we'll learn over the summer that will influence this decision. But I know that team's not going to take the 6 because I don't think they legally can. And I don't think Toronto would take the WNBA would take it because it's just like, again, copying.
Yeah, I think we got a lot of work to do in the marketing department to figure out what the name of this team is going to be.
I personally don't think they should do a vote because people don't know what they're talking about. Like,
No, they
let's
really
not
don't. I
do
mean, the
that.
people did vote on Raptors and like avoid calling them like the Toronto Hogs or the Toronto.
Yeah.
That was one of them. The Toronto Bobcats. Glad they didn't call them that. Like
The
Raptors
Raptors was
was
the
the correct pick.
best, yeah,
That
out of the
time.
pool that you were given.
I'm
wouldn't say
sorry.
it was-
Raptors is a cool team name, regardless
pretty
of the
is, yeah.
movie. It's like the ferocious dinosaurs that
Yeah,
are cool
okay, that's
and
fair.
like
That's fair.
hunting packs. Like,
Yeah.
any team should be lucky to call themselves the Raptors.
Oh, so we're gonna be the
Um,
W Raptors now? That's what we're gonna
We've
play.
brought it all back. Yes. No, absolutely not.
No.
Yeah, there's some really bad ones on like Real GM that I'm looking through right now.
Yeah.
The Toronto Arsenal. Name yourself after the most disappointing European soccer teams. Yeah, great. Do that.
Okay. My biggest thing, regardless of name, is that the color needs to be purple. Hashtag bring purple back.
Ooh,
We need to bring purple back. Bring purple
You're
back.
on the right podcast for this because I think I did an entire episode last week screaming about how they need to go purple again for the Raptors.
Yeah,
so.
they did.
Yeah.
And at that point, I wouldn't care if the Raptors went purple again because the superior basketball team in my heart in Toronto would be purple. No offense, Toronto Raptors. Love you.
Anyway, what we've determined here today is that my name, Toronto Smoke, is still the best one out there. I defy you to top it, even with the climate change connotations it brings. It's a good, cool name. And
you got to wait till San Francisco is named before we do that.
Yeah, I guess. What is the Fog kicking around is like a name for them?
That's kicking around for them,
yeah.
Or the W Warriors.
The Warriors.
Warriors. Yeah, no. We gotta wait. Yeah, that's another thing that will influence that. Because I do, don't get me wrong, Smoke is up there for me, kind of. But you can't have Golden State Fog and Toronto Smoke. Like, that's just...
No, you can't. Yeah. Too many bad visibility themed teams here.
We gotta see if those rumors, those allegations...
Although the Smoke and the Fog will absolutely own the sky, just like historically.
And the sun.
WNBA. And the sun. Yeah, I mean,
too many weather names.
I guess
that's
the sun burns off. The sun burns off fog.
Yeah, but not the
sun
smoke.
Can't get through smoke. So Smoke again. It's the best name. Can't beat Smoke.
Yeah, I just think there's too many weather. I don't know if Smoke counts as a weather name, but there's too many weather names in the WNBA.
I think it does now in our modern hellscape. I think.
Yeah.
Like
that's sad. Now. But yeah, that's my other thing about Smoke. That is kind of my downfall. I'm like, too many weather names in the WNBA.
That's fair enough. That's fair.
Yeah.
Look, I get it. Like, there's, you're not going to have like a cigarette company like being your main sponsor or anything like that. I understand.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of really fun. Like, I'm just thinking of the dry ice implementations of in-game ops. If you're the Smoke, then that's about where it all falls for me. Anyway, we'll keep on kicking it around, I'm sure. Hopefully they don't pick something bad. We got lots of time to figure that out. Chelsea, this was delightful. Thank you so much for hanging out. And what can we say? Delightful?
Oh, wow. Very nice.
Fun pun on your last name?
I've never heard that one.
Well, you heard it now. Do you have anything you would like to promote for the good people out there?
Yeah, actually just posted about this today on Monday, but Raptors HQ is looking to expand our team. So if you're looking to start writing about the Raptors and you want to, no experience required kind of vibes, just go to at Chelsea Leite or at Raptors HQ on the hell site, as Sean calls it, and figure out how to apply to that. But yeah, hoping to find some peeps.
Raptors HQ is where I got my start. Highly recommend doing it if you're in the mood to write about some ball. And hey, the Raptors, the WNBA team, it's all looking up in Toronto basketball from here. Everyone go check all that great stuff out. Check out all of Chelsea's great work. Her Twitter handle's on the screen at Chelsea Leite. And we will leave it there for now. Thank you so much for rocking with us this week. We'll be back again. No Friday episode because we went Sunday to Thursday this week because of the lottery. So we'll be back again on Monday to talk about, I don't know, whatever we damn well please. And maybe just more of why the Toronto Smoke should be the team name. Either way, thanks so much for hanging. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. And I guess I'm going to take this shot and see if it goes in. Nope, didn't go in. I'm 3 for 90 now. I'm not going to make any professional basketball teams. Bye.